The first bill on the agenda is House File 3447, relating to polling places on college campuses. Representative Purcell, would you like to move that House File 3447 be recommended to be placed on the general register?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay. It's been moved, and then I understand you have a DE2 amendment. Would you like to move that?
Yes, so moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do you have any description of the amendment you want to give us before?
I'll just describe both of them at the same time.
Okay, so this is to put the bill in the shape you would like?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, is there any discussion to the DE2 amendment? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the bill is in the shape you would like. The amendment is adopted. Representative Purcell, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Chair Freiberg. House File 3447 is an opportunity to ensure more college students are able to cast a ballot, and perhaps for the first time. The first time I was eligible to vote, I remember how excited I was to have a voice in our state's future and in our democracy. Participating in Minnesota politics is a great way to increase students' interest and engagement in the future of Minnesota, a state perhaps they grew up in, or where perhaps they'll choose to stay if they came from out of state. Regardless of where college students live, if they are eligible, students too have the right to vote. Currently, some post-secondary schools host Election Day polling places. Many do not. This bill proposes that if requested, one day of early voting could be requested on campuses with 1,500 or more students. For example, in District 58A, where I represent, there are 2 small liberal arts colleges, one of which has an on-campus polling place on Election Day, one of which does not. And we see the pretty stark disparity in voter participation in each of those. House File 3447 will remove proven barriers to participation, information, transportation, and time for young adults currently in colleges of all kinds of institutions across Minnesota. Given that young adults are least likely to own a car, and many 18 and 19-year-olds do not even have a driver's license, it can be very difficult for them to reach early voting and Election Day voting sites. In one survey, the second most common reason youth gave for not voting was the lack of time to vote between classes or jobs. Inconvenient polling locations and lack of transportation were also named as barriers. An early polling location on campus would address these concerns, if not eliminate them entirely. I'm excited that this bill will expand access as well as participation by the newest voters, young adults, and in doing so will promote lifelong voter participation, a habit that will continue their whole adult lives. House File 3447 offers students a valuable tool to boost these efforts and increase student participation. You will find letters of support in your packet, and I have testifiers on hand as well, and I'd like to allow them to share why they support this bill.
Thank you, Representative Purcell. I do have 4 people who have signed up. First on the list is Ben Reimler, and hopefully you pronounce your name similar to the way I pronounce mine, otherwise I'm going to be embarrassed. Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
Chair Freiberg, Ranking Member Torkelson, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on Representative Purcell's House File 3447. For the record, my name is Ben Remler, so you're very close, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for Students United. Students United is the statewide student association representing all current, future, and former students attending Minnesota State's 7 universities. With many excited and engaged voters on our campuses, Students United is committed to strengthening and improving Minnesota's election laws for future generations. This is why we encourage lawmakers to enact automatic voter registration, the pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds, and expanded access to the ballot by allowing all voters to choose to vote by mail last session. We were proud to see these provisions become law last year, but we know that more work needs to be done. In fact, before the transformative changes made during last year's session, Minnesota had not kept pace with innovative policies that allow for greater access to the ballot box, with the cost of voting index ranking Minnesota 24th in the country in relative ease of voting. And this is why we're excited to support House File 3447. Across our campuses, students are eager to participate in our democracy, but we know students often face particular challenges in accessing the ballot. For example, young adults are less likely to have their own mode of transportation, making it difficult to get to early voting locations which are off campus. Students also tell us their inability to get off campus throughout the day because of work or class schedules is a significant obstacle to voting. Fortunately, this bill would address these barriers, and we ask for member support. Once again, I want to thank Chair Freiberg, Ranking Member Torkelson, and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony, Ben Remler. Next on the list is Nicole Freeman. And after Nicole Freeman will be Karina Vieta. Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, members and Chair Freiberg. My name is Nicole Freeman. I serve as the Government Relations Director of the Office of Secretary of State. Hope you all had a great interim. It's good to see you again. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on House File 3447. The Office of the Secretary of State supports efforts to expand access to absentee voting, which this bill does by allowing a college or university to request a temporary absentee location on campus. We know that since the adoption of no excuse absentee voting, more Minnesotans are choosing to vote early by absentee ballot. In 2022, nearly 23% of voters chose this method of voting to cast their ballot. As we know, college may be the first time that a person votes. Having an in-person option on campus to vote allows a voter both the convenience of casting a ballot in person, but importantly allows them to work with an election official directly to cast their absentee ballot. They can get their questions answered and ensure that they're completing all of the materials correctly so that they're confident their ballot will be properly cast and counted. Finally, we appreciate Representative Purcell's continued conversations with county and city election administrators on this legislation. As we consider changes to the system to expand access for voters across Minnesota, it's important that those tasked with administering the elections be a central part of those discussions. Over the past 8 months, the Office of the Secretary of State and local administrators have partnered and worked to implement the expansions to voting access passed during the last session. Their partnership during this process has been greatly appreciated. And the elections this year will be the first time that many of those provisions are implemented statewide. So the office looks forward to continuing to work with the committee and election administrators to continue the tradition in Minnesota of secure, free, fair, and accurate elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Karina Vieta, and after Karina Vieta will be Sia Shalar. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Karina Vieta, and I'm a student at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus, and previously I attended Inver Hills Community College, where I helped students exercise their right to vote. First and foremost, I want to extend my gratitude to Representative Purcell for championing this legislation and valuing the input of students like myself. Voting stands as a cornerstone of civic engagement, offering young individuals a powerful platform to shape the trajectory of democracy. While just one aspect of civic involvement, voting holds an immense sway in amplifying the voices of the youth and influencing issues relevant to our lives. Although historically youth voter turnout has lagged behind other demographics, recent elections has seen a remarkable surge in participation among young voters. Notably, Minnesota students have led the nation in student voter turnout over the past 3 elections. However, disparities persist, stemming from unequal access to information, avenues for engagement, particularly across racial ethnic lines, educational backgrounds, geographical regions, and age groups. Research conducted by the Center for Information of Research Civic Engagement reveals that non-voters often cite transportation challenges and inconvenient poll locations as barriers to voting. To address these barriers, opening an on-campus polling places proves effective. For instance, in 2018, students at St. Paul College successfully implemented this same approach, resulting in increased accessibility to marginalized communities. Unfortunately, bureaucratic hurdles have hindered the expansion of such initiatives to more locations. This legislation aims to streamline the process, facilitating establishment of additional voting locations on campuses statewide. I was once among the unlikely voters. At the age of 25, the 2022 election marked my first time casting a ballot. In high school, I felt disenchanted, believing that my voice didn't matter, and lacking guidance on navigating the democratic process from my Salvadorian parents who were focused on making ends meet as small business owners. It wasn't until I entered college that I grasped the workings of democracy and found my voice. This underscores the pivotal role that higher education institutions play in nurturing not only skilled professionals, but also informed and engaged citizens. With this legislation, Minnesota will continue to lead the nation in voter turnout, cultivating a new generation of active and empowered citizens like myself. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And the last testifier who signed up is Sia Shalar. Welcome to the committee. Once you've taken your seat, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Freiberg and committee members. My name is Sia Shalar, and I'm a freshman at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. I'm a part of our undergraduate student government, and I work closely with our government and legislative affairs team. I'm here today to support an amendment to House File No. 3447 that allows a student government organization of a post-secondary institution to request an additional polling place for at least one day on the institution's campus. I would first like to highlight the enormous amount of collaboration, dedication, and commitment our organization takes. Our president, vice president, and various representatives are entirely elected by our student body. We have over 30 staff members that handle both internal and external affairs, as well as interact directly with administration and students on various projects to improve our university. We also provide a role within our organization called a student group representative, a position that allows one member of any registered student group on our campus to hold voting power. We interact with students of every background, and our mission is to represent and uplift students' voices in any way possible to create lasting, meaningful change that is not only beneficial to current students, but students entering the University of Minnesota in the future. This access to a polling place at the University of Minnesota is extremely important for the representation of youth within politics. According to the Andrew Goodman Foundation, research demonstrates that greater access to on-campus polling locations correlates with increased student voter turnout. This on-campus polling site would also address the issue of difficulties in finding transportation and the time that voting takes, which is a huge hindrance to our full-time students, a majority of whom do not own vehicles. The ability to request a polling place would also allow us as student government to create equal opportunities for all racial groups. As according to Circle, young adults who are white vote at higher rates than young adults of color. It is extremely important to amplify students of all backgrounds, and that would be greatly improved through these on-campus polling places. Undergraduate student government represents over 30,000 students at the University of Minnesota. I urge you to consider the importance of allowing organizations such as ours to be able to request polling places on behalf of all of these students, giving them a platform that would allow them to participate in our democracy without having to make sacrifices for an endeavor that should be easily accessible. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this bill? Okay, seeing none, we can turn to member discussion. Do any members have any questions or comments? Representative Davis, then Representative Coulter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's wonderful to be back and to see all your faces again. My question, thank you, Representative Purcell, for bringing this to committee. How is this going to be funded?
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that this would fall under the funding of the county, whoever that local polling election, I don't know the correct words, the institution that dictates the polling place.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're going to have an unfunded mandate that the counties are going to be responsible for. And you had said that every student has a right to vote. Currently, do college students have the right to vote right now, Mr. Chair?
Representative Purcell.
Those who are American citizens, yes.
And over the age of 18.
And over the age of 18 and all the other requirements.
Yeah. Representative Davis.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. We have an unfunded mandate for counties here when college students already have the right to vote. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact number. Help me out, Representative Purcell, but how long is early voting? How long can a person go in and start voting? What's the days there? How many days?
Representative Purcell?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. If
And I
Mr.
honestly
Twig-
don't either. I just,
Mr. Gehring?
Mr. Chair, the absentee voting period begins 46 days before Election Day, and there's a shorter window of time where you can vote early, which is the ability to vote using a live ballot box, and I believe that is 17 days. 18 days.
Representative Davis?
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So here, college students, they already have the right to vote. They have a month and a half, 46 days to get that done, to vote. But here we're going to set up a polling place on college campuses that we're going to expect the counties to take care of all the funding and the staffing and the organizing for it. And again, this is going to increase costs when they already have a month and a half to vote. They already have the right to vote. I think this is very fiscally irresponsible for us, once again, as a state, of wasting taxpayers' money. And to me as well, I just want to bring up this point, Mr. Chair. If voting is important to a college student, which I hope it is, okay, I really hope it is. I want voting to be very important to every legal citizen in our state who resides in Minnesota, who is considered a resident of Minnesota. I want them to go and vote. But I also want us to be very careful how we are spending, making decisions that the county is going to have to fit the bill for. So to me, this is fiscally irresponsible. And with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I do have 5 members on the list, so if we could try to keep our questions somewhat brief, that would be helpful. We do have 2 additional bills. Representative Coulter.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this may be a question for Ms. Freeman. It's kind of just really a technical question. So it says, if requested, the clerk must establish an additional polling place for at least 1 day. So presumably that means they could establish it for more than 1 day. And my question is, how is the time that polling place is on campus agreed upon?
Representative Purcell, did you want to take this, or would you like Nicole Freeman to come back down, as Representative Coulter requested?
I would love if Ms. Freeman is able to return to the dais. Thank you.
Welcome back to the committee, Nicole Freeman. Please respond to the question.
Thank you, Nicole Freeman. The way that the bill reads, what I would assume is that it's an agreement between the county and the institution. So,
Okay, so
Representative Coulter.
presumably that would fall then under the same agreement at which the location is agreed on and so on.
Nicole Freeman.
yes, I believe so. The county would be able to, I think in this situation, ultimately, the minimum requirement is 1 day. And so if it would be on the county to choose to offer it, or the local government to choose to offer it more than 1 day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Purcell, for bringing this. I had a question just real quickly on how did you establish that number of 1,500?
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We went back and forth many times. We got information from the higher education researcher to figure out how many schools this would apply to. I was partial to the 1,500 because then that includes both of the schools in my district, the smaller of which does not currently offer a polling place on campus. We kind of went back and forth about what makes it make sense that there's going to be a cost, and that really incredibly small institutions, if they don't have enough voters, is maybe not worth the cost benefit. Yeah.
Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern, I guess, would be, and I would wish that we would take this into consideration, is in one, we're saying 2 different things. We're saying we care about everyone's voice and we want everyone to have that opportunity to vote. And then on the other end, I very much look at this could be a very biased decision of why we're putting this in here, because smaller schools might tend to lean more conservative. And my other question would be like, why are we targeting higher population liberal, arts colleges, like you said, of your own? And so that is concern to the public, that we are picking and choosing who we are driving to the polls to vote. And I do think that in a elections committee, which up until 2023, the state of Minnesota has really had this committee be very, nonpartisan, and we respected that to the state of Minnesota. This last year in 2023, it was very, very appalling to see that the Republicans' bills were not heard, and that it was so one-sided in this committee, and there was no partisan, there was not bipartisan support on these bills. So I do think that this is a red flag. I'm going to point that out right away, but if we're going to continue this again in 2024, as we did in 2023, it looks like one side of Minnesota's voices will not be heard.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Altendorf, for bringing that up. This is still very much, we've been going through different iterations, so be happy to look at that. That honestly did not occur to me. So as this goes through the Senate, we can discuss changing that number. And I just take a little umbrage with, we're not driving students to vote, we're offering more accessibility for them.
Okay, thank you. Representative Bonner.
Thank you. I appreciate the bill, and I wanted to kind of, I had hoped originally to underscore the fact that this bill was slightly narrowly tailored for these, and I think you suggested potentially one day when might be a good number, but certainly those larger institutions might choose to do 2 or 3, if that makes sense for their population. But I really appreciate that fact, and I know it was brought forward. We do acknowledge that there will potentially be a cost with these things. And if members recall, last year we did approve a voter fund, which would allow counties to get assistance with funding these types of activities that allow folks to actively participate in the democratic process. They allow them to have access to polling places in and around where they live. And I think that's really important to keep in mind as we weigh this issue. And I will say that either way, I think having that fund was something we felt very strongly about. But I also want to say that I don't think that's a waste of taxpayer dollars to make sure that folks have access to participate in what is probably their most critical role as a citizen. In fact, I would argue that is probably the strongest and best role any citizen should have. So I think one of the roles of government, it's important that we meet people where they are, and I think this bill absolutely does that, and so I am really grateful that you've brought it forward, and I look forward to seeing it continue on its path. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bonner. Representative Bliss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to follow up on one of the things that Representative Davis here said is, that currently we already have access to 46 days of early voting, absentee balloting. Now it's permanent if you want to become an absentee voter. And current law allows the local government units to set up a, temporary additional polling places. Yeah, they can already vote absentee in these places. So they already have a place to drop it off. And most college students are I don't know if transient's the right word, but they're not permanent residents of that facility. And by doing this, you're going to be pulling them away from their local voting places back home where they have ties and actually understand what's going on, and bringing them, making it more accessible for them to change their polling location to the college that they're temporarily residing at, which is fine if they want to do that. But again, in current law, it allows the county to set up a remote polling or mail-in drop-off. So I think that, again, what Ben was saying there, Representative Davis, is that it's something that's already covered. They have 46 days to vote. It's going to put an additional cost to the counties. I do have a question, though, and legit. What happens if your college spans across multiple precincts? Do they have to set up 3 precinct polling places?
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. again, these are discussions that we were having and looking into the actual data of how many campuses that applies to, how many institutions that applies to, both if there are two separate locations, for example, University of St. Thomas, they have a Minneapolis campus, they have a St. Paul campus, as well as my town sits on two different counties, so trying to look and see if there are institutions that straddle, multiple of those jurisdictions. And my understanding is how that, like the ward and precinct, how those delineations are made is happening at a local level. And so hopefully the idea is, and maybe Mr. Gehrig could correct me, but the idea is that then this is locally led to figure that part out.
Thank you, Representative Purcell. Yeah, I think Mr. Gehring might have, I was just asking, the way I read the language, it just says the county auditor or municipal clerk must establish an additional polling place. So the way I read it, only one polling place would be required. Is that, maybe you could just confirm that, Mr. Gehring?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I think I would agree with that reading. The grammar seems to suggest just a single location could be established.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, Representative Bliss.
So, for instance, and I haven't followed up after the last realignment of the precincts, but I know Bemidji State, I used to represent that area. They had one part of their campus was one precinct, one part was the other. And if they set up a polling place, they would have to have staff there to ask where you live and have multiple different, and that was a small college, relatively small college. They'd have two sets of ballots, and they'd have to verify who's where. Is that how I'm understanding that? You'd have to verify which ballot the voter would have, so they would have to be multiple ballots there. And
Yeah, maybe Nicole Freeman, maybe you'd be a good person for this. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Nicole Freeman. Yes, at an early voting location or an in-person temporary location like this, the county would bring all of the ballots for the whole county. So any eligible voter within the county would be eligible to vote at this location as well. So it could theoretically not only serve the students on campus, but anyone who worked on campus or lived near campus and wanted to utilize that location as well.
Representative Bliss?
thank you. Just a closing statement. I think the logistical nightmare this might present, considering the fact that we have 46 days of early voting, there's already an ability to set up a ballot place for the early voting. I think it's fiscally, as Representative Dave said, unresponsible, and I think it could be a logistical nightmare.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, with the definition of the size, it's pretty easy for fiscal staff to be able to see there are X number of these possible locations to be able to come up with a fiscal note, because there's additional equipment that would be needed quickly if you add additional sites. I do appreciate the author having 53 days, so it is 6 days before the 47 days in the earlier part of this section of law for the temporary ones. So that way they see, oh, I don't need a temporary one in that location. It's already there. The discussion, it's not just, well, first of all, it doesn't matter the location of the school that you're attending, it's the location of your residence. So I know there are campuses where they have students that are attending that are from different counties, different school districts, different cities, let alone different precincts. So the possible number and variation of ballots is extremely complex. The intent, I understand, but the actual execution would require such a diverse process and quantity of ballots that it might become very problematic I will give a related example. There is a precinct in Dodge County, and the people vote there, but some of the people have a different ballot because they're in a different school district. So same precinct, but we've got to have multiple ballots, and they've had problems with not having sufficient ballots to cover that issue. So I would think we really need a very good research of the complexity that we're trying to push, because on the temporary locations, you have the word may. In the new language, it's must. And if you're forcing somebody to do something with less than 2 months' notice, that they would have to analyze over 1,500 students for what are the different residencies, precincts, cities, counties, et cetera, what are the number of ballots that we're going to need, and of what type. That is not a trivial issue to be able to do the logistics. And oftentimes the implementation of a law or statute is much more complex and difficult than the original intent. And I think at this time, since we do not have a fiscal note, we do not have an idea of the amount of burden we'd be putting upon with a dictated must. Some counties don't have huge staffs, but they might have within their county one of these institutions, or maybe two. And, frankly, I think it needs more due diligence before we go forward with implementation of this. But I do commend the additional 6 days and the intent, but I think I've made it pretty clear we've got more questions than answers at this time.
Thank you. Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for you. Are you in possession of a letter from the Minnesota Association of County Officers regarding their concerns about this bill?
Okay. My understanding is there was an error in formatting of that, so it wasn't printed or able to be included in the packets, but it was posted on the committee website.
My copy is quite legible, Mr. Chair. I don't see why it wasn't distributed to this committee.
Representative Torkelson, when the document was submitted via email, the file was corrupted, and so when we tried to open it, it wouldn't open. I got notes from a couple members, lobbyists, as staff saying it wouldn't open. I took the letter and I copied it into Word. I posted it to the website, but there wasn't time to get it printed for this morning.
Well, Mr. Chair, this letter should be copied and printed and accessible to the members of this committee. It's critical of the bill concerning the costs involved. It feels to me like you're suppressing information that's valid to this committee.
Yeah, no, let's not get into motivations here. Like, these formatting things happen. This is a problem for staff. I'm just pulling it up on the committee website now. Anyone else is welcome to do that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll read a quote from the bill.
Sure, please.
From the letter. A temporary polling place on a post-secondary institution's campus may be part of the plan for an efficient and effective election. However, it is already authorized under current law and should not become mandated if requested. It should not become mandated if requested by the institution. These folks have concerns. I don't know why they've been eliminated from the agenda.
What, I beg your pardon? Okay, yeah, they didn't sign up to testify. There was a technical problem with the letter. It is publicly available on the website. We all have access to it on our devices, but thank you for raising the issue, Representative Torkelson. Representative Purcell, any closing remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Representative Torkelson?
I'm not quite done, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
sorry, I misinterpreted your...
In regard to, for the author, in regard to the question of 1,500, this number seems rather arbitrary. I have a college in my district that happens to have about, I believe, about 800 students. It seems like you've picked a number based on your own personal situation. It may not be appropriate for the entire state.
Representative Purcell, I think you sort of covered this before by stating that, it wasn't really practical from a cost perspective for colleges with not that many voters, but do you have any additional comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would be happy to go down to 800. We started at a higher number, I think, but happy to continue to have that discussion. Also, that right now, the 1,500 is, as someone mentioned, that it must be provided for early voting, but there's nothing that prohibits a smaller population institution from making the same request. So that is not unavailable to smaller campuses the way that this is written.
Representative Torkelson, any final question?
Well, no, thank you. Just a comment. Frankly, the mandate is really the issue here. These activities are already permitted at the county's discretion if they should be requested. I believe counties are responsive to the needs of their constituents and institutions within their borders. This mandate could be costly and seems unnecessary.
Thank you. Representative Purcell, any closing remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to just thank our testifiers who spent an early Wednesday morning with us. This bill is good policy. It's good for our young adults. It's good for our state. It's good for our democracy. It provides an opportunity to more easily participate and vote for students enrolled in college, which is often difficult due to busy academic and work schedules, lack of transportation, et cetera, et cetera. House File 3447 offers students a valuable tool to boost these efforts and increase voter participation in Minnesota. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Purcell. Representative Purcell renews the motion that House File 3447 as amended be recommended to be placed on the general register. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion prevails. House File 3447 as amended is recommended to be placed on the general register.